All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 260 of Together BHA. The winning start continues, Adam. How are we feeling on a bank holiday Monday in the UK, but not the US?
Yeah, how am I feeling on my lunch break? Yeah, brilliant. Well, I don't really know how you can be anything but ecstatic, which is funny because it wasn't an amazing performance against Man United, but we're currently sitting joint top of the Premier League. As of recording about 2 hours ago, the O'Reilly transfer got fully officially announced. We are imminently awaiting Kadioglu's announcement, which I believe then will put us around the 200 million spent area. I don't. I mean, what more do you want? What else do you want? That's
It's mental, isn't it? Matt O'Reilly coming in, and we are anticipating Kadioglu, possibly even later today, right? Like, we don't know. It's only
you might be listening. He's already signed. Yeah.
Yeah. It's only 5:20 here, so there's loads of time to go. Really, in the grand scheme of things, Matt O'Reilly, only 23 years old, from Celtic. I know a couple of Celtic fans. They all basically say, "Imagine Billy Gilmore, but like 10 times the player." Like, they're absolutely gutted to have lost him. Like, they are crying. Like, one of the lads sent a message yesterday when he was like absolutely deluded himself into thinking he'd be in the starting lineup yesterday for Celtic, and was just like sobbing in the group chat when he wasn't. Everyone knew he wasn't, but like, it was that denial is that intense. They're that sad to lose him. So unbelievable. And if you look at his stats, there's a post on Twitter from Lemmy. First in key passes, expected assists, shot assists, deep completions, touches in opponent's box, goals, non-penalty goals, expected goals. Like, he was first in everything, basically. Second in crosses, through passes, successful attacking actions, headed goals, second at Celtic. Passes to the penalty area, third. The guy can do everything you need him to do as a going forward centre midfielder. And Hertzler is obviously already gone on record saying he's actually very happy to defend as well. So, I mean, this is the guy to partner Weaver in this midfield long term, isn't it? Like, this is absolutely the guy we've signed to do that.
This is your Pascal Gross replacement. 49 appearances last year, 19 goals, 18 assists. So what is that? 37 goal involvements in 49 games. And you might say, well, it's the Iron Brew League. It doesn't matter. They played Champions League football last year, and he got 3 assists in their 6 Champions League games. One of which was against Lazio, one against Feyenoord, and one against Atletico Madrid. So seems like he can do it against decent sides. And there are worse teams in the Premier League than those 3 teams I just mentioned. And we've potentially played 2 of them. But no, I'm very excited about this. And I know he was born in London, wasn't he? But he plays for Denmark, right?
He does, yeah.
But there's still this weird, like, Scottish-esque central midfielder merry-go-round that's occurring right now, where you've got McTominay that's gone over to Napoli under Conte. We still, again, time of recording, Billy Gilmore has not moved to Napoli yet, where they're trying to create some weird Scottish central midfield pivot that I don't think even the Scottish national team want to have, but Conte's trying to create it out of choice. And then we've ended up with O'Reilly from Celtic, and I'm so excited to see him and what he can do. Because if he can be half the player Pascal Gross has been over the last few years, then we are set.
Yeah, last centre midfielder we signed from Celtic didn't do too bad for himself either, did he? Baram Kayal was pretty much
not bad,
an absolute linchpin in our promotion campaign next to Dale Stevens. I mean, so if that's anything to go by, if we can make the step up, we're very happy indeed, ain't we? Stephen Mitchell in the chat, bonjour. Nick as well, very excited for our Danish O'Reilly. Yeah, I think this is going to be one that I think he's probably going to come into the team quite quickly as well. He's had his preseason. He knows what he's doing. So I feel like it won't be too long until we see him in the team. How's your fantasy Premier League doing, Adam? How's your fantasy Prem this week?
Well, it doesn't really matter because I captained Haaland, so it's fine.
Did you?
Yeah, but I have been struck by the Nkunku curse, and I had Emil Smith Rowe just sat on the bench, and of course Nkunku comes on 85 minutes in, and everyone just goes, "You bastards, Chelsea." But yeah.
The reason I'm bringing it up is because I triple captained Haaland this week.
You've blown your load too soon there.
Did I? A hat trick?
Yeah.
I think that's a very definition of not blowing it too soon.
Nah,
51 points.
Can be double and triple game weeks, aren't there? Invariably, though, Pep will like put him on
where he plays 28 minutes,
yeah,
and doesn't score a goal. Yeah, absolutely buzzing with it. And I had Smith Rowe on the actual squad, so very happy with that.
We'll see. It's a long season, mate. You've
marathon, not a sprint, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Sam Cook, though. Sam Cook is top of our league, tipsy at the Barco. Horrible way to see Barco head off to Sevilla two weeks into your fantasy Premier League season there, Sam. They are top on 180 points. That's 90 points a week so far, that run rate. Like, that is absolutely nuts, isn't it? Like, what is he doing?
What's
Cheating.
even happened there? Like, how?
He triple captained Haaland this week as well. Great minds.
Right.
He has Luis Diaz. Gordon got 10. Raya got 10. He's got Alexander Arnold, Pedro Porro. He had Joao Pedro on the bench. Could have got even more points if he'd have played him over Isak.
That's a bit much, isn't it? Just give it a rest. Doesn't need that many points.
16,500th overall. What an absolute nutter. Absolute nutter. We're also recorded on the day Sven-Goran Eriksson passed away. Very sad to hear. Pancreatic cancer wiped him out. Horrible version of the Big C from all accounts. And obviously, I think people always look at that era as the golden generation that never really did what it should have done. But for me, like, the biggest thing I'll always remember about Sven is the 5-1 in Munich. Like, I don't know about you, but like,
you know, Clive Tilsley does those commentary sheets. He's quite famous for the way he writes them up, all manually. Anyway, you can buy them, and I've got one framed on my wall from that game because it stands in memory so much. It's right up there. That 5-1 result, which is amazing. That one of our most vivid memories of England has just been like sort of fairly non-consequential game. But yeah, that was a pretty historical moment. And obviously it's incredibly sad to see Sven go, but I like one of the anecdotes that came out in a more like humorous fashion a few years ago from him when he was involved in his female accomplices, let's say. And I think one of the women described saying that he described my breasts as mountains and used to say, I want to get my handsies on these Andes, which I thought is just, if you're going to die, and I said something like that, I would want someone to talk about that after I've passed. So just to put that out in the ether for him, God rest his soul.
I think it's fair as well. Like, I think you've done a good thing there.
They won't say that at the funeral, but they should.
They should. Like, almost to the point of etching it on the tombstone, possibly. But yeah,
could go there.
It is really up there. Phenomenal stuff. Kadioglu yet to join, but looks like he's going to be in the next day or two. Paul in the chat saying that once he joins, this will have been quality-wise the best transfer window in our Premier League history. Thoughts on that? Do you concur? A wild Robin has appeared.
Whoa, what?
This was unexpected.
It's not even the spring. No, he's gone as well. Fleeting visit. I wouldn't even limit it to Premier. I would just say it's the best transfer window ever in the club's history, is it not?
I would concur with that. Yeah, I suppose it kind of. I know the way Paul's worded it is Premier League history, but I think it goes without saying that just means ever, doesn't it? I suppose it doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would agree. I don't think we top this in any time in our history at all. And I mean, you've got to be thinking like this year alone, like £200 million spent. Like, I'm sure there's some statistician out there. Like, this is it. You're welcome for this tweet tomorrow. When I see it, I'll retweet it for you. go and have a look back at how many years it took for us to spend 200 million total in transfer sums.
Yeah.
Because I suspect it's going to be the mid 2010s at least, if not like possibly like by COVID. So in what, our 120 years of history, we've just outspent ourselves in one summer. It's absolutely mental. And I mean, it's not done, right? Like, we're very much possibly in for a centre half at PSV as well, with a week to go.
Yeah, but and also let's also add this context. You could argue that historically, of all of the years this club's been in existence, we've just loaned out some of the best players potentially that will ever play for this club. Between Buonanotte, Barco, and invariably then like Cozier Dewberry goes out as well. Like, just think of the quality that we've seen from Buonanotte at Leicester. And then what we think Barco's going to be. We've decided this year that, you know what, we don't need that. That is, since when has this club been able to do that? Like, loan players out of that quality. Just say, yeah, go and just, we can't give you first team football because we're that stacked now. It's just laughable.
It is. Stephen in the chat asserts that the best transfer window was when we sold Neil Maupay.
Did you see that video yesterday with the Everton fans?
I did. Yeah, I'm team Neil all the way on that. Like, absolutely, no doubt about it. Like, these people are just psychopaths, isn't it? Like, we see it in all stretches, right? Like the parasocial relationships that people think they have with these players or pop stars or TV guys or movie stars. Like, it's getting worse and worse, and like, that sort of shit is just unacceptable. Like, he has every right to just be like, you wouldn't do this on a building site, would you? Like, someone like messes up their job. Like, it's absolutely insane.
You know, Robbie, I'd be interested if you've seen that video as well, what you think, because what frustrates me, and this is just a problem with the internet and just people.
Explain the video for those who haven't seen it.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, it's basically there's all the Everton players are getting on a train to go back from their game. And then a bunch of the Everton so-called fans are just standing there like hurling like pretty bad abuse at them. And then Maupay then gives it back a little bit as well. And he then came out later and then tweeted and basically said their behavior was disgraceful. And then a bunch of people responded. And again, it's probably just a small minority that are just more vocal, saying that, oh, actually, mate, you dish it out of all people. You should be able to take it. Like, it's banter. It's not banter. Like, he actually does banter online and messes about with people, and it's kind of fun. He's like, he plays the heel. Like, these people are actual just scumbags, like being disgraceful to another human being. And then you get the people saying, well, they earn so much. You should expect to get this abuse if you don't perform well at your job. Piss off. That does my head in.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, Everton are a shambles off the pitch. We know that. It's not really the fault of the players, I wouldn't have thought. I mean, as much as they've not had a great first two games of the season. Our game against them, it certainly didn't look like they weren't trying. It just looked like they were slightly not of the quality, but that's a very different thing from, ostensibly not trying. So I get the fans are angry, but it's not the players' fault. And I suppose they took their chance. Like, the players are more visible. And yeah, I've seen that Maupay stuff, like he's the clown online, etc., etc. Underline the word online, right? Like, when it starts to bleed from the internet into real life, that has all sorts of horrible consequences that you can see in a non-football world. It's absolutely, it's disgraceful, and you'd like to think it's the minority of Everton fans, but it seems like they're just in it seems like the flashpoint, doesn't it? It seems like the one time, if you're the Everton players, where you do not want to be having to walk through, like Euston Station, I guess, have to get on basically a public train back to Liverpool, having lost back-to-back games without scoring a goal. That seems ill-advised from the club's point of view as well. Maybe that plays into how shambolic they are off the pitch, that they're kind of willing to put the players through that potential sort of gauntlet that they've got to run, but
on the rails while going off the rails is sort of level of
nice.
irony. Yeah.
But yeah, horrible. I mean, like, you don't condone that whatsoever. And it's not going to do anything for the morale of the players, is it? Like, they are already in a relegation battle, right? Like 2 games in, 100% they are. So that's like, you're not doing a great job of helping the players dust themselves down and go again, right?
Yeah, I mean, they've been circling the drain for 3 or 4 seasons now. Like, it's I don't know whether this season will be the one that catches up to them. I'm sure we'll find out as the weeks go on, because obviously we've got Leicester looking at points deductions already. Southampton look unbelievably bad, and Ipswich are ultimately what we all thought they were, like fun but naive, and it's gonna kill them. But let's move on to talking of naivety. Let's talk about the Brighton Manchester United game, considering that's what we are here to talk about this weekend. 6 points from 6, obviously, is a great start to the season. One change in the lineup, a possibly departing Billy Gilmour's last hurrah, or an I'm not effing leaving moment. We'll find out in about 5.5 days, I think, with the Napoli nonsense going on. But he was in. Weaver was out fully from the squad with a minor muscle strain per Hertzler in the team. So we hope that that's a real minor muscle strain, not a Brighton minor muscle strain, because we know how that can go. But what did you guys think of that lineup? I mean, I'm assuming you guys were pretty much expecting that, given the result against Everton, and more than anything, given Manchester United's start to the season and how well Xerxes played, and their big boy signing of De Ligt, like a centre-back of all people. What were your thoughts at seeing Mason Mount in that squad and Harry Maguire at the back? Like, it was surprising to me. What about you?
Firstly, shout out to Pete Davey in the chat. Does loaded FC for Newcastle United. They do an awesome job. If you've got any interest, when we played Newcastle this season, go and listen to them. They do a fantastic job. The Gilmour stuff was weird, because even with a knock, I don't think you'd expect him to have come in. I think we'd have all said we'd just bring Belabor in. So that was the biggest bit of weirdness for me. Like, Gilmour's head cannot have been in the game, but sort of shows how little we know, because he was pretty excellent for most of the game if he is leaving. United, I don't understand this team, and no, I don't think anyone understands this team, because clearly during this summer they've gone through a period of how do we get this side set up to basically be a little bit more defensively aware. And to me, they now play like a Southgate team. And I said this while watching them. They don't seem to take many risks. They'll just wait, sit back. Everyone's behind the ball. Let's try not to make too many mistakes, and then we'll try and run forward on the wings and do something and see what happens. And they were just about as naive as one as well, as you say, towards the end of the game. So, I mean, I predicted we'd win this game. I predicted we'd win this 3-1. And I was actually a little bit disappointed in our performance, because I think we could have probably done them in a little bit more.
I said it in the chat at the time, both when we were winning and losing at one point, I think. And we're not going to talk too much about the tactics today, mainly because I think that I said it to you guys, like, I don't think we're going to see what a Fabian Hertzler Brighton and Hove Albion team looks like, or even the first hint of what it looks like, until probably possibly Ipswich, but definitely the international break. And after that, one, with 6 points from 6 regardless, which shows tremendous strength, right? Like, that we've got that anyway. But two, I think the one thing that you can say from this, at least my takeaway of what he is employing tactically, is he's essentially turned around to them and said, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Continue how you're playing. Continue the De Zerbi way. But let's get a lot more defensively responsible. And it makes for quite a lot less pretty at times. And when the ball turns over, let's get it forward a little bit quicker too, fellas. Like, let's not dick around with it too long, but let's be responsible when we don't have it. Seems very, essentially, a lot more pragmatic plan B that I think we all wish De Zerbi would have had. And I think it's pretty clear this isn't long-term Hertzler ball. But I think this is working for now, and I think it's a really good move. I think we're going to transition to a back three with the signings we're making, right, which is what he wants to do. But I just really wanted to point out that the tactics haven't changed too much other than those two pieces, and whether you agree with that or not. And, you know, what these other teams are able to do against it. Like, it seems that Ten Hag and Dyche don't have an answer for that, whereas last year, 2-0 at the Amex, absolutely walked all over us. And we all know our recent record against Everton under De Zerbi was absolutely horrendous. Is it really that simple? Just being a little bit more defensively pragmatic is enough to get these guys over the line when you have a full fit selection of strikers and wingers?
I mean, there are elements that still give me a little bit of cause for, not concern, but where we need to tidy up, which is they played through our press 3 or 4 times with ease in the first half.
Very well.
I mean, there was one example where it started in their left back area and they dinked it around the left side of the pitch, and it was then turned inside, and suddenly within about 5 seconds they had a 4-on-3. And if they had more consistency, you know, that could have been a different story. That's the only thing I worry about. But as Josh says, hopefully a transition to 3 at the back and some natural cover on the left side of the left wing back will tidy that up. Because ultimately, I know we'll probably get onto it in a bit more detail, their goal and their disallowed goal both came from a glaring gap in our left wing back position, because Hinchelwood is obviously not a natural left wing back. So we need to tidy up. One aspect is going to be done by signings and Purvis coming back to fitness, having a natural outlet at wing back. But that is the bit that worries me slightly, is a slight lack of pace in defence. Maybe that's what we're going to see him more regularly be, that person that will sit there and mop up if they do play through our press. But that's the bit that worries me, if anything, so far, that we need to tidy up.
We saw that against Everton, though, didn't we, Adam? Like the difference that Weaver had in defensive presence to both Milner and Gilmour in both games. I don't know about you, but that looked apparent to me that he was going to be a lot more responsible for breaking up play there.
Yeah, and I think you saw in the brief time that he came on, because when was it, about 73 minutes into this game, I thought Baleba looked fantastic, and he's got that level of energy. So I wouldn't be shocked. I know it's probably not going to be the case with O'Reilly, but you could also see O'Reilly coming into that position where Pedro kind of takes up at the moment, where you play Baleba and Weaver together. If you really want to have that kind of, if you're up against strong opposition and you're more about breaking up their play as opposed to creating. Yeah, look, I agree with you entirely. I agree with both of you that this is still very much, there's a lot of De Zerbi in this, tactically and approach and personnel wise. Like, this is the thing that I think stood out. We're top of the table, 6 points from 2 games, so you don't get any better than that. And we only have one of our new signings in that 11. One. And I think he was the worst player on the pitch, which was, as Minte was amazing at the start against Everton. And I think playing against a side the way Man United was set up to very much sit back and damage mitigate against wide attacks really was not his strong suit. He wasn't particularly good with the ball, fairly careless. But outside of that, you were watching the same Brighton team as last year, and actually weaker in some positions, because, as you said, Hinchelwood at left back, and Veltman in, Milner in, and a Gilmour who is partially eating Neapolitan ice cream somewhere elsewhere. So there's only up from here, and you're already up.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who listened to the pod knows our feelings on James Milner from last year. But I mean, what a difference it makes to play a player of his experience in his best position, fellas. Like, I'm not saying he's the best player on the pitch. I'm not even saying he's a particularly good player on the pitch, right? Like, we've seen it both games. There are times where he is strikingly off the pace. Like, and you kind of just accept that because he's 38 years old and he's James Milner. Luckily, we had Weaver to cover for him against Everton. Even when his passing was atrocious, his defensive work was phenomenal even then. And this week, luckily, like Manchester United's attack centrally was absolutely diabolical. Like Mason Mount, when he got subbed off, I'm there. I'm at the Amex, and I swear to God, I forgot Mason Mount was on the pitch when he got
I
subbed
agree
off.
completely. If you asked me if Mason Mount was playing, I would have gone, I don't think so.
Awful. So when you've got that problem in front of you, it becomes a lot easier for a weaker midfield to combat that, right? But I mean, likewise, right? Our first goal on 32 minutes, Danny Welbeck, again, by the way, what a start to the season he's having. Kaoru Mitoma at the back post, again, comes on a big switch across. Kaoru Mitoma slots it across. Maguire can't get there. He's fuming about it as well. I don't know if you saw him afterwards.
It's both dreadful. It's dreadful defending from, I think it's Delap that doesn't get out to close the cross down. And then Maguire just seemingly forgets which is his left foot and which is his right foot. And then just can't, like, you can see, like, you can see his brain is obviously working faster than his body. Because you could almost visibly see him trying to work out, how do I actually turn my body so that I can block this ball? And he ends up just like twisting himself around and getting nowhere near it, which was phenomenal, obviously.
Yeah, it was terrible. And just because we've had some good comments in the chat here as well, I'm not going to go too off piste, but I kind of am. Paul in the chat comments that Diego Gomez's agent has stated that everything has been agreed. He will report to the club in January, is signed for 5 years. Together BHA exclusive from 2 weeks ago, fellas. We talked about this 2 weeks ago when I was eavesdropping on MLS nonsense. This was announced ages ago. So Diego Gomez is coming in January, which is great news. Another centre midfielder, though, probably lends to the idea that Gilmore may well be off, or at least we're definitely getting rid of Moder and Dahoud, right? So we'll see where they go between now and the end of the month. Nick talking about the fact that we do play with a lot more tempo, which is a key here. And Mark also pointing out that Weaver is our only defensive midfielder. He's going to be key. I mean, I wonder if at some point we're going to see Milner slot in backup central defensive midfielder. There's a lot less work for him to do there. And if Weaver gets hurt at any point, you can put in Milner or Baleba, depending on what the game is asking for, to go ahead and do it. Because I agree with you, Adam, the Baleba substitution, even though we're getting all the way to the 73rd minute now, was the game-changing decision here. I know we went and made a plethora of attacking signings, substitutions and signings, I suppose, on about 90 minutes. But for me, like the Baleba one turned it on its head. They had full control from the goal all the way up to the substitutions. And when that happened, the game changed entirely. And it was that energy and defensive strength, really, that Baleba brought to the midfield.
Yeah, it's an interesting role as well, isn't it? Because you could argue, I mean, we talked about should he have started ahead of Milner, potentially. But the fact that he comes on 73 minutes with that bag full of energy, like, you know, is actually, would you have got the same result had he played from the beginning? So actually having him as an impact player to come on against a tiring Manchester United with not a huge amount of depth on the bench, it's a very clever, it's a clever sub at that point, because it's probably not the one that you think he's going to make at that point. You think he's going to make the attacking ones that then came on, 90 minutes. So it's a very clever sub, and it's also showing the depth that we've now got. That it's a really nice option to have him coming off the bench to change games, which you don't necessarily associate with his style necessarily.
Was it as good a sub though as Matthias de Ligt coming on for Harry Maguire on the 79th minute? Because that is sort of top tier management, if you ask me. And your defensive line is just perfect after that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's baffling. It's just baffling.
Compare the subs. Like, go and look at who they bring on, and tell me who outside. Ignore the names, and tell me who you'd rather bring on out of the groupings that were brought on in this game. So they brought on.
To be fair, though, when Xerxes came on at halftime for Mount, that just seemed like the most obvious one in the world to me. And Garnacho coming on for Rashford likewise. And frankly, both should start next weekend, right? Like
they were both bad.
I have watched both United games this year so far, simply because it was the Friday game and I'm an addict, and then obviously they just played us. So like for me, like Xerxes and Garnacho have to start. Like Rashford, it's shocking. Like match of the day, Alan Shearer was going off on Rashford. Like he was just like, he's a grown man now. We can't make excuses for him. He's offside every time he passes the halfway line, and he just rolled the tape, and there was about 8 clips, and he's just offside. It was brutal. And like, what is he doing? Like Garnacho's got to start for them if they're going to do anything serious over there. And then beyond that though, those last 3 substitutions are the absolute just doldrums of footballing substitutions.
Just I mean, the rest of their bench was crap as well. Like that, Johnny Evans was another option for you, and a couple of dudes I've never heard of, and then Christian Eriksen.
One ex-Albion player sitting on the bench.
Yeah, fair. Well, but if you think about the impact they had, and you're right, Garnacho was probably, he looked decent when he came on, at least better than Rashford, which isn't hard. We just talked about Baleba coming in, who was excellent and changed the game. You brought in Yasin Ayari, who, when we do properly get on to talk about the winning goal, played a very, very solid first-time pass to get the ball into Adingra, if I remember correctly. Adingra is obviously the one that sets the goal up. So we've now just talked about 3 of the subs basically completely changing the game. And then Ruta looked good as well, but obviously a ton of time to really make an impact. And then Cisse didn't do a ton. But like 3 of your subs won us the game.
I mean, it could have been 4, really. Like if that ball had gone just over Pedro's head instead, like that is Ruta's right behind him.
Yeah.
To smash that ball. May have missed, may have not, right? But like there's another one that could have changed it as well. So yeah, and we'll talk a lot more about why there was 2 people on the back post with no one around them when we get there. But I mean the goal from them at 60 minutes, we've talked about it in the preseason episode. We've talked about it ever since. This ability to allow them to just slice us apart on the wings. It's something that every team in preseason did to us. Even the Japanese sides did it to us badly. And we've seen it against Everton. We've seen it against United. I think you're right. I think once we get these players in and we change our shape to the one that he wants, and we have actual natural left backs and left wing backs, we're not going to be seeing that as bad. But I'll tell you one thing that really stood out to me for, I think, pretty much the entire game until Diallo scored. Because I think from 60 minutes onwards, it was quite breakneck. Like it really picked up from then on. I think it was actually really quite a good game of football. But from 0 to 60, and similar to last week, really, this just looks like teams that aren't really wanting to be there. It's quite poor football, isn't it? Quite poor quality across the board in the Premier League in general. And it begs the question that, like, we're just playing too many games, I feel like. Like, this is the hangover from a 2-week break for a lot of these players and then back at it for another Premier League season. There's probably a reason why people like Haaland are already starting off on the front foot, because they've actually had a real summer. Yeah. Mental, isn't it, really?
Robin, what did you think about this? Because overall, I know we can have the bias because of the result. This could very easily have been a Man United win, and this is a very different conversation. It's Xerxes' knee saving us.
I mean, Delot's cross, right? One of the best crosses I've seen in a very, very long time that Ahmad managed to skew wide. You've got that. Yeah, I mean, it could easily have been 3-1 United. And they couldn't really have had too many complaints if that had been the scoreline. You know, as it happens, we get quite a freak occurrence with Xerxes. But, you know, we were not great. And, you know, we've not been great in both games, to be honest. So the fact that we've come out with, you know, 6 points out of 6. I mean, I jokingly said, you know, lucky teams win titles, which, you know, I don't genuinely believe that's going to happen. But, you know, it's quite nice that we're in a position where we cannot play very well. I mean, let's reel it back. Like, we've not played very well and we've beaten Man United, right? This is not like we've not played very well and we scraped a 1-0 win against Oldham, right? Like, this is, this is like big. This is the kind of the big time, and it's really difficult because I find myself torn because I'm with you going, I'd have been pre-game, I expected 3 points, which is mad. Like, you're going to games against Man United now. I think we've won, what, 5 out of 6 or 6 out of 7 in the league against them now. I don't think statistically we've got the best record against them of any team they've ever played in the Premier League era, like in terms of win ratio.
Yeah, it was the best, and it's now even more the best. I think it's 50-50 now, isn't it?
Something like that, near enough. I think because we've played them 15 times we've played them, this is our 8th. We've played them 15 times in the league, and I think we've won 8 or 9 of them.
Can't be 50-50.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that. 8 or I think. Anyway. So yeah, I'm kind of torn because you've got to be very happy that we didn't play very well, but won. But then, yeah, as comment in the chat says, this coming Saturday is going to be the first real test to see how we get on.
I'll throw some positivity in there because you're right. It could have been 3-1 United, but right before that first Diallo goal, it could have been 2-0 Albion because Danny Welbeck, 2 inches lower that header, and that's coming off the under the bar and going in, isn't it? Like, we're already starting to see dividends from the set pieces attacking wise for sure, because there are players getting into positions that are providing those opportunities already. Pre-season was really good for it, but we're starting to even see it start here, aren't we? Because that was, I mean, it's so typical, right? Like, of any game of football to have that happen, and then for them to go up the other end in 3 minutes time and score a goal to equalize. But I mean, we were very much in a case where we could have been further ahead. And I think we did. We had better XG as well, 2.09 to 1.43. So, I mean, we had the chances as well. It was, although I tried to think how much XG that Joao Pedro goal counts for, because that was like an unbelievably open back of the net. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. I just think that, like I said early on, I think we're not really seeing what Hertz team can do. And I think you're going to see it be a little bit like, I don't think we played super well, but we won. And I think that's just going to be the way he operates for a few more weeks yet. I thought we'd take 4 points from our first 3 games. I didn't know which way. I thought we'd beat one of Everton and United and draw with the other. Knowing the Albion, it's hard to know which way round that's going to go. I thought the same as you. I thought we'd beat United and probably draw at Goodison, and then inevitably lose at the Emirates. I still think we're going to lose at the Emirates because they've started very well as well. But I mean, 6 points from the first 9 is better than I anticipated. And Ipswich after that, I mean, everyone, no disrespect to them, but like, we expect a win, right? So,
and they got Forest straight after that.
We do.
So you got 4, and then is that the international break after Forest, or is there one before that?
It's actually before. It's actually after Ipswich.
Okay, after Ipswich.
First 4 break, then Forest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there?
Adam squinting. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Ipswich is on the 14th. Forest 22nd.
It's Ipswich Forest, then the international break.
Well, and then it's Chelsea on the 28th, and then there's a break. Then you don't play Spurs until the 6th of.
So we're both incorrect in different ways.
Yeah. Oh, it's Arsenal. It's after this one. It's the international break.
Yeah, it's after Arsenal. Yeah, 2 weeks after that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. We're wrong in 3 different ways.
Yeah. That sums up the podcast. Thanks for listening, everyone.
See you next week.
That's right.
Scott McTominay comes on 79 minutes. Julio Enciso back on the bench and back in the game 79 minutes in. And then the rest of the subs all come on as well. Yasin Ayari, Ruta, and Adingra on for Mitoma, Minte, and Gilmore. I've got to be honest, fellas. Like, I love Ayari. I'm going to be so glad when he goes. I'm going to be so sad when he goes. Like, I know he's going to. But, like, he just looks like such a talented player to me. Like, it's going to be gutting to let him go. And I feel like we're probably going to see him become a lot more important for a team a la Bonanotte than he was just even last year in the Championship. He looks like he's made a huge step up over the summer. And I think it comes with what you said, Adam, like that first touch to play the ball back to Adingra to score the goal. It essentially opened up the entire defense. that winner, obviously unbelievable. 94th minute, a dinger to Pedro. Ruta was right behind him. I think there was at least another player back there. There was a lot of players at that back post. I mean, what are we doing here as Manchester United? Absolutely mental, isn't it? Like the entire set of defending is just absolutely crazy. I've got a crazy stat for you. Since 1992, since the Premier League era, up until 2022, Manchester United have conceded 2 Premier League losing goals. Under Ten Hag, they've conceded 6. It's a problem, isn't it?
They're botless.
It's a big problem. I mean, they had kind of the same issue that we do, in that they had no natural left back on the pitch. They've got they've got a right back playing left back, but still, the positioning is just like it's. Do you know what it is? It's like when you played football in primary school, right? And everyone clusters around the ball and nothing actually happens. It just like when you see the screenshot of where their what their defensive spread is, you can basically throw a very small tea towel over their entire defense. And why you've got De Ligt on the pitch, right? And no one has thought, let's just have a quick look over the shoulder. Just on the off chance there might be anyone in the glaring space that we've just left at the back post. No one bothers. And then the goal goes in, and you can see there's a split in the Man United defence. Half of them are just going, like angry that it's happened. And the other half are looking at each other like someone's just discovered fire, right? Like, it's just mental that like it's a level of defending that just like if a League Two team conceded that, like you'd be furious, right?
The thing is, you were right of what you said before. It was so frustrating watching us try and press on them for most of the game, and they were just playing little triangles around and basically being able to play it out against our press. So they have the makings of being a decent football team. I know we're overly talking about Man United here, but it's funny to talk about the downfall of a club that's sort of ruined a lot of our childhoods, just in terms of what entertainment of watching football. But yeah, I mean, this is what happens when your captain's Bruno Fernandes. You take him off 79th minute, right? You also then take off, I guess, the guy that used to be your captain, Harry Maguire, at the same time to bring on Matthias de Ligt. I'm assuming then Martinez is captain, but this is the point. This is why you don't do this in games. This is why it's bad management. You've taken off your leadership and the people that coordinate and marshal your team in certain situations. That's what happens. That's why people dislike Ten Hag. That's a managerial mistake, and that's naive. And not to overuse the thing that everyone's talking about, there's the manager that made the naive decisions at the weekend was not the 31-year-old. It was the idiot coaching Man United.
Yeah. I mean, it's mental, isn't it? Really, absolutely crazy.
The thing for me is that they've not changed, right? If you hear United fans talk, they will tell you that was exactly the problem last season, and particularly at the end of the last season. So he's had an entire transfer window and an entire pre-season virtually, and you're still ending up with having to start Bruno Fernandes up front and not having a fit left back. And we've had our own struggles, right, with arguing over why have we ended up with no central midfield and no fullback cover at various points over the last year or so. But like, this is Manchester United is
Manchester United Football Club.
Yeah, but under a new era, right? Under a new ownership, where we've been told that basically they're going to leave no stone unturned. Everything's going to be done in a professional manner. And I'm not saying they've not had years and years to change it, right? But the signs so far are that they're going to overpay for players in positions that they don't need, and ignore the glaring holes in their squad because it's probably quite difficult to fill. And they're going to end up with the same result, right? It's that madness, like, the definition of madness is, trying the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. they have kept the same manager and they've seemingly, kept the same transfer scattergun approach, and then the fans are seeing the same result, which is they're shit.
Winning the FA Cup was a curse for them. Like that, they could have just got rid of it and started fresh. But have you thought maybe that Dan Ashworth is sort of like it's a bit of a psyop from Tony Bloom? We just send him around to different clubs to sort of
just like
ruin them a bit.
Do you reckon the real Dan Ashworth is like it's like a Scooby-Doo episode? He's like locked in a janitor's closet.
There's multiple Dan Ashworths.
Yeah, just around, just causing havoc, like just going and whispering, going, Brighton want to sign this player.
There are 5 Dan Ashworths at Chelsea as we speak, all with different code names.
But no, they are. I mean, you're right. Winning the FA Cup papered over the cracks, definitely. But I mean, they still spent most of the summer trying to replace Ten Hag, seemingly.
They did,
and then just couldn't find anyone who really wanted the job, by the sounds of it. Which again comes back to this is Manchester United, where genuinely you've got managers like to Adam's point. If Alex Ferguson had left at any point in the late 90s, early 2000s, right? You've got everybody in the world queuing up, every manager in the world queuing up to do that job. And now you've got basically every manager worth their salt going, I don't want to go anywhere near that place. Still.
I mean, it's just getting the same way with Chelsea, right? Like, they're about to go to Enzo Maresca. Like, they can't get the big boys, like really prestigious big boys anymore for the same reason. All right, let's talk Brighton, though. Who was your man of the match yesterday, fellas?
Easy.
Yeah? Go ahead.
It's Jan-Paul Van Hecke. He was outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly the man of the match. If you're looking for player who changed the match, we've talked about that, Belabor. If you're going to make that distinction. And kind of unsung hero of the match, close your ears, Adam, Jason Steele. I thought his distribution was absolutely fantastic.
No, you're all right. It was.
And I think he's the first 2 games he's not had a lot to do, kind of saving wise. The only other thing I've noticed is that they've definitely worked on his coming for crosses in pre-season, because a couple of times yesterday he was really confident in coming for them. So yeah, shout out to Jason Steele, because I know that we've given him a fair amount of stick, which has been but it's been deserved.
It has, yeah,
a lot of the time, and I think it's only fair that we are balanced enough that when he does have a good game, that we call it out. So yeah, I thought he was excellent.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I still think Verbruggen's going to cruise into the number 1 spot.
Yeah, absolutely.
But,
I'm not having the.
I think he's. I think
it's
he's
not the
really
palpitations, right? Like we talked in the first episode of this season about how we felt having Verbruggen not there for the first, 4, 5, 6 games, whatever it's going to be, and I think it's gone immeasurably better so far than we could have hoped.
I would agree with that. I did. Let's do man of the match first. So I agreed with Van Hecke as well. I also wanted to just give a shout out to Joao Veltman, who has barely done anything wrong at all over 2 games as well. I think there was one poor pass. No, that was Van Hecke to Milner, where they had a big bust up, not Veltman. But I mean, he's came back in. He had a really weird season last year, didn't he? Injured, this, that, and the other, like just not quite getting there. But I mean, he's came back in, playing at right back in a newer system that he's not used to. And I thought he was excellent as well yesterday. Like, he did a really good job. I think both of them, like him and Van Hecke on that right side of the defense, just unbelievably comfortable together.
We could potentially, at a certain point, if we're resting players and playing a 3 at the back, we could have Verbruggen in goal, Weaver dropping into centre back position along with Veltman and Van Hecke, and basically just have a Netherlands B team.
Well, Kadioglu is basically Dutch. I mean, he's essentially Dutch as well, isn't he? Really?
Yeah.
Well, let's talk B teams, fellas. Obviously, a fantastic win, 6 points from 6. But the EFL Cup beckons. Crawley tomorrow. Sky Sports Plus, for those of you in the UK, it is available, which means if it's not available in the US legally, if I was to do it illegally, I wouldn't ever condone it. But I've heard a rumor that it would be quite easy to do so, because Sky Sports Plus is showing every EFL Cup game. So I would never condone it, and it's a disgusting, hateful thing
disgrace.
to do. But there are going to be people out there illegally streaming it, and I just want you to be aware and be safe and not to do it, because there will be a lot of people trying to get you to do it. So don't submit to the peer pressure.
Would you choose to watch it in a Green King pub, or are we?
Not any bloody more, no.
No, we wouldn't.
No, go to Wetherspoons. So this is semi.
What's the squad? What's the squad that we're looking at for Crawley? What's your starting 11 for Crawley? Let's point out, Ruta is cup tied.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
So that's really shit. But beyond him, who are you looking and hoping to see tomorrow?
Hopefully Rushworth in goal. I think it's got to be an option to get him in goal. I mean, it depends. Are we going to go? If we're going to go kind of full changes, or as many changes as possible, then you'd see Lamptey, Webster, Igor coming in. Don't know who we're going to play at left back. Potentially Hinshelwood again. I'd like to see Gruder, but apparently he's carrying a slight muscle injury, which is why we've not seen him on the bench. So I don't know whether we're going to risk him or not. Baleba, you'd like to see get a start, presumably, just even to get some minutes in the legs. And then Enciso to get a start as well, you'd have thought. Adingra to start. I don't know how far away Ferguson is. I know we're told he's back in training, whether he's going to get a few minutes off the bench. Same with Purvis. I mean, I think we've got the ability to play an entirely different 11 that would be quite comfortable in a Premier League game at this point.
Ayari and
Baleba to come and play, and then
would be in midfield. Yeah,
I guess you'd have Adingra, Enciso.
Sarmiento's going to Burnley. If you guys have missed that news, so he's not going to be on there.
Kozia Dubre's not gone anywhere yet, so whether he comes in, I know he's played I think he played in the under-20. He played in the EFL Trophy last week for the under-21. So I don't know.
He'll be gone. Rumours of Portsmouth for him.
Yeah. So there's a few. I mean, I think basically everyone who's available that we've not really seen start either the first two games is the short answer.
Let me ask you a question that is semi related to what you asked. The subs bench and the players that we had playing against Man United, we've already talked about this. They're all, for the most part, I know we're expecting Billy Gilmore to go, and we're probably going to see both Rushworth and Ayari go, probably, right? But you've got a 20-man squad for match day. You didn't use Lamptey, Igor, Webster, or Rushworth against Man United, but all the other guys obviously came on. Now, you are adding to that O'Reilly, Gruder, who we've mentioned, Ferdi Kadioglu.
Yeah.
So these are three players that you expect to feature quite heavily for the team. You've got the injured Estupinian, Ferguson, potentially Solly March at some point. You are signing Diego Gomez in January, if we are to believe all of that information that's coming out. Where the hell are all these players going?
Well, I think the answer is that more are going to leave than. I mean, obviously we know that.
Who?
We know that we can see that Sarmiento's.
He wasn't in the squad though.
Yeah, so I mean, in general, who's going to leave? So Sarmiento's going to go. I think Ayari's going to go purely numbers wise. Kozia Dubre's going to go again, numbers wise.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got those three that are definitely going. I think Gilmore's going to go again, numbers wise. It doesn't make any sense otherwise. As much as I'd probably like to keep him, I think he's going to go. And then ultimately, I think you're probably looking at one other going. And if I had to stick my neck out, I'd probably say it's going to be Lamptey. Is going to go.
Took the words out of my mouth. I have a sneaky feeling he'll be gone as well.
Again, because I think he's only got a year. I think he's only got a year left. I think he's got a year left on his deal. Might be wrong, might be two. But either way, I think he is another one who is going to, partly numbers wise. Again, you're trying to fit, as you said, Adam. You're trying to fit a an enormous number of players into a 25-man squad. I know we've signed a bunch of 19-year-olds who aren't going to count, but still, I think he's going to be one that's going to go, and I'll be sad if he goes. He's one of those players who has, various times been unplayable on his day.
Well, literally, in most instances. But yeah, I know what you mean.
But I think he's just lost his. It's kind of when Loire came back from his various sort of knee and hamstring injuries that he had years ago. He just lost that. He's still quick, but he's lost that absolute burst of speed over the first 4 or 5 yards. So I think he'll go. So that's kind of 4 or 5 players who are sort of in and around the squad that will go. Obviously, Osman's already gone.
It's still not enough, though, for the act. I'm talking about the game day 20 of those that you named there. And we're just swapping Rushworth out for Verbruggen, right? We don't have to get too smart about that. But all we've lost there is Ayeri, Lamptey, and Gilmore. And I said, I think are 8 players. So that's a weird problem.
I think Milner is not going to be playing a lot of football when everybody's fit.
Yeah, and I think he will. I think he will probably not even be in the matchday squad.
Yeah,
as well for a lot
numbers
of those games.
Wise, it's nice to have, and I think in the chat it's obviously mentioned that he may be one that he can start to transition to that coaching role. But we're not assigning the number of central midfielders that we've signed to still have James Milner as first choice in the matchday squad. I'm just not on board. I'm not on board that particular lunatic bus.
We've got rid of Gross. Well, I say got rid. We've had to let Gross go. Certainly not got rid, right? Like everyone would rather.
They're coming for you now.
But we've lost Pascal Gross. We're getting Gilmore to Napoli by the looks of it, like as one of those moves that it's just a bizarre one, but it's happening. We're getting rid of Moda. We're getting rid of Dahoud. I will say getting rid of some of these players. We're getting rid of Moda, getting rid of Dahoud. So that's 4 central midfielders right there in a central midfield group that we already said was weak. So then you've got Weaver coming in, you've got Matt O'Reilly coming in, and you've got Baleba hopefully stepping up into a more prominent role. Milner now being utilised as a centre midfielder as he should be. I mean, you would argue that an Ayari going out on loan as well, like as another centre midfielder. Like you would argue that like we're still quite thin in centre midfield.
I think Ruta can play centrally. It depends. I mean, it depends if Hertzler wants to play. At various times at Sao Paulo, he played basically an attacking midfielder in that second central midfield slot. I know it's different. Like, how many teams in the Premier League can you get away with us essentially just having one, Weaver sitting there as the entire sort of central midfield, and everybody else is just going hell for leather up front. Like, I'd argue that that's maybe something that might get tweaked from his St. Pauli system, but as it is, the reference point that we've got from him, you could make a case for Ruta or Gruder playing in that central slot. O'Reilly as well. So if you're thinking that you've got basically Baleba, Weaver, Milner to cover the kind of deeper lying role, you've then got O'Reilly and
Gomez,
Ruta, Gruder sitting there. Depends. Is Hinchelwood? We still don't really know what Hinchelwood's best position is.
And by the way, Ferdi Kadioglu is the same. You can play him all over.
Yeah, so I think we've got the flexibility. To Josh's point, I think we've got the flexibility to pretty much land where we're ultimately going to end up with Hertzler. We don't really know what that end state looks like yet, but I think what we can conclude from the transfer window is that we've got bodies everywhere to make that fit, whatever that style ends up being. Or indeed maybe there's no distinct style. It's a complete it's a sort of anti-De Zerbi. It's the polar opposite to De Zerbi, who was obviously wedded to playing the same style regardless of who's fit. You've now got someone who is going to potentially be the total opposite and just see depending on the opposition.
And I know we're going to come close to wrapping here. We're pretty much at everything we need to. But I was driving home from the game, and I said to the missus about something that really stands out to me in Hertzler's pre-match interviews, all that kind of stuff. And Stevens just said, do you think Hertzler's secretly watching this podcast to prepare for Arsenal? And I think the thing that stands out for me in these first 2 weeks is that those last 3 words, Stephen, prepare for Arsenal. I think that it's a breath of fresh air. Seeing, like, I love it, but I love this more. I love De Zerbi's passion when he was here, but I love this more. When De Zerbi was asked, and I went back and watched to make sure I wasn't like tripping, it's true. When De Zerbi was asked on occasion from the journalist, what are you expecting from United? Right, they always ask that sort of question. Right, it's just a nonsense question that they ask every manager every week. What are you expecting for United this weekend, Roberto? They're a great team, but as long as we play with our style and our passion and our tactics, we can win. That was the answer every time. And it's so different. I don't know if you've seen it already, but Hertz has given us a whole breakdown on how he expects Crawley to play this week. Like, Crawley, he's got a whole breakdown already. He gave us a whole breakdown on what he expected from Dyche's Everton, a flat 4-4-2, Dominic Calvert-Lewin playing in a certain way, like Decore playing in a certain way. Like, he gave the whole breakdown, and it was literally on paper exactly in play. Like, he literally called it to a T. Obviously, nice to be Dyche because it's so easy to know. But then the same for United. He was like, well, they can play with a false 9 and Bruno's there. That's going to be difficult. We've got a plan for that. And then they can also play with 2 up top, which was seen before when Højlund's fit. And he gave the whole rundown of like way he expects United to play and how they're prepared. And he didn't give the details how we prepare, obviously, but like he basically was like, I know exactly what they're going to do. We've done a lot of research. We're as prepared as we can be to combat the style that they're playing. And I think that pragmatism is probably what's squeaking out 3 points against with a team that ultimately isn't ready to play his style yet, based on just sheer squad depth and availability and all that stuff, really.
Agreed. I mean, the flip side of that is you'd be a very bold man to come in and rip up De Zerbi's style completely, right? Like it's kind of worked. And we've talked to death about how difficult it was for the players to learn that style originally, and you've still got essentially De Zerbi's team there. So I think he's doing similar to what Arne Slot's doing at Liverpool, which is you're in the nice position where you're inheriting a squad who know how to play in a certain way, and I think he's making slight tweaks around the edges at the moment. And I'm totally with you. Either the first or the second international break is where you'll probably see something different come out the far end, because he's going to go, right, hopefully we'll have a cushion of, by the time we get to that post Nottingham Forest, post Chelsea away, whenever it is, kind of end of September, you'll get to a cushion where hopefully we've got 12 points, maybe something like that, 10 12 points hopefully, where you go, okay, fine, we've got a bit of breathing space. And, we said before the very first episode that, what we didn't want to be going into is that international break where you're scratching around. You've not got points on the board. Already people are starting to go, is this is this Hippier Mark II? We've already blown that out of the water in, 180 minutes of football. So I think that's when we'll start to see it. And it'll be really interesting to see his pragmatism. What does his system look like when it's embedded, and what level of pragmatism is there within it? I think there's going to be I think pragmatism is going to be a pretty key feature, because like you say, if he continues to give the breakdown of this is how I think every team is going to play as we go through, naturally that's going to have a different answer each week as to what is the answer to beat them. So I'm enjoying it.
It's different. It's really different. And yeah, as you say, there's I mean, we saw it with De Zerbi when he came in, right? He even said, like, there's not a lot to change right now. They play similar to how I want them to play. Like, Potter's style is similar to mine. There will be changes, but they will be slow because it takes time. And I think Hertzler's is the same for slightly different reasons, really, around squad additions and injuries coming back and all that fun stuff, right? But I think that I'm sure he is drilling his principles into them all preseason, all the way through, and just being like, here's short term. but I'm sure they're very aware of what the long term is going to look like under him, because there's so many freaking players that are amazing wanting to sign for us. So
it's mad, isn't it? Before we drop, I think let's just address some of the comments that we've got on the transfer spend versus De Zerbi versus Tony Bloom all in wrestling match that happened towards the end of last year. The easy way to look at the argument is people go, De Zerbi wanted us to spend money, and now we've spent 200 million quid, 200 plus million quid. Like, what's happened there? I think you can drill it down to the discussions we've had in our own group, which is that I don't think it was ever about the amount of money. I think, as we've said for months, this transfer window was going to be massive. Ever since the financial results came out, and ever since the Premier League cracked down on PSR, started to dish out, points deductions and everything like that, this transfer window was going to be massive. Always, I think. Anyway, so that's a given. I think it purely comes down to the profile of the player. I don't think it's necessarily even that De Zerbi wanted to have a massive say in who it was, because we've seen his track record for who it was with us. Who it was Dahoud and and Igor and Fatih. We've seen how that went for players, and we can see at Marseille, without getting ourselves into all sorts of legal issues, we can see the type of player who he's comfortable signing for Marseille, right? So I don't think the who was necessarily the thing to worry about. It's very much the profile of player. He wanted players in that mid to late 20s, good to go, could slot into a top-end Premier League team, no worries at all. The Locatellis of this world. I think that's it. Obviously, what we're still doing is we are still signing players where there's hopefully going to be a massive resale value should they do well. We're now fishing in a slightly bigger pond than we were, partly because Chelsea have now started buying everyone in South America, so we've had to pivot to a different strategy. But it's still very much we see value in players that we think can do a job now, but we can sell on for double the money. So I think it comes down to a simple clash in terms of the type of player that we sign. So I still think if De Zerbi was still here, I still think you'd still be spending the same amount of money. I don't think it's a case of now De Zerbi's gone, Tony Bloom's happy to kind of release the purse strings. I think it's just a pure and simple clash in the type of player. I mean, that's what we got. I think as much as he was very emotional and, kind of depending on where you fall on the spectrum, sort of either hung Tony Bloom out to dry after the Roma game, or was just giving his heat of the moment, typical Roberto interview. I think it was pretty clear that there was just a clash of type of player that we sign. I think it's as simple as that. I've made it much longer and more boring than that, but I think ultimately that's the summary.
Yeah, I think Stephen Mitchell nailed it. I think De Zerbi wanted to buy the player, Bloom bought the position. And I think that actually really goes back to our Gus Poyet podcast, where he basically confirmed that that's exactly the way Bloom operates, is that you tell him a position you want and he and traits or characteristics you're looking for, and Bloom presents you a list and you pick one of his approved list and you go from there. If you don't like it, you don't stick around. So I think that's exactly right. All right, Crawley tomorrow, Arsenal Saturday, again, early kickoff. And then we're off for 2 weeks already. This first international break always comes around way too soon. But we will be back Sunday, 5 o'clock, instead of Monday, 5 o'clock, because of the bank holiday. So have a wonderful week, everybody. We'll be talking Crawley and Arsenal. Let's see how long we can keep the win streak going, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
Have a good one, guys. Have a good week.